This is WTOC.
St. Patrick's Day Parade from downtown Savannah.
Thanks from the Children's Hospital.
Welcome to the Vidalia Onion Festival.
It was a great day for the heritage. Thanks for watching.
This is a WTOC original presentation. When a hurricane threatens, when an evacuation is warranted, you realize just how interdependent we've become. You may be ready, but what about gas for your car?
Can't supply them quick enough.
Communication to your family.
Texting works when nothing else will.
Electricity.
We've actually laid Hurricane Katrina, put an overlay over Georgia.
What happens to your money?
Everybody thinks about cash.
The ships coming into port.
No vessels anywhere near here by the time the storm hits.
People in the hospital.
Our patients and their families stay united.
20,000 soldiers in the area. What are they going to do?
To get them on the roads and for them to know which roads to take.
And those 50,000 tourists visiting Hilton Head. Is there a plan for them?
How many people are here? Where are they located?
We're headed into the thick of hurricane season now. Time for a good hard look at all of the dynamics of being ready as WTOC presents your first alert, Severe Weather Watch.
Good evening. Tonight we'll tackle hurricane preparation in a different way as we try to consider all the things that can impact your planning and the plan that you might be putting together, things you have thought about. But we start with a trigger mechanism behind all this hurricane activity itself. I'm joined by the guy who spent more 3 a.m.s watching storms developing than anybody in our area, senior broadcast meteorologist Pat Prokop, and the guy who's chasing him for that 3 a.m. title, though I don't think you want that title, do you? Here's meteorologist Dave Turley. Pat, I know there are some mitigating circumstances this year. We'll get to that in just a second. But Dave, give us a read on this year's hurricane season.
All right. As we take a look at the storms so far in this 2012 season, we've had 4 of them out there already as we wind down the month of July. 4 named storms are actually the earliest on record for this date. 3 of those storms have been tropical storms. One's actually been a hurricane. That was Hurricane Chris. And we had the earliest and strongest pre-June landfall, which was Beryl, which made landfall near Jacksonville on May 28th. So a lot of activity early in the season. Again, Alberta was just offshore but affected our area here as we went in through the end of May. Following that very closely was Beryl, which developed out here into the western areas of the Caribbean, moved through Cuba, dumped heavy rain down in Florida, then kind of made a little loop and moved back across the southeast here, brought us some very heavy rainfall. Chris was the only hurricane but remained well out into the Atlantic, no bother to anybody. And then we had Debbie, a very slow-moving system which dumped a lot of heavy rain across northern Florida and the extreme southeastern areas of Georgia here. That was in through late June. So we've had the list of the names so far. We've gone up to Debbie so far. The next name on the list would be Ernesto. Thankfully, nothing in the forecast for anything developing as of yet as far as the next tropical system. But again, so far, 4 named storms. We've had 1 hurricane, nothing intense. What is the average calling for the rest of the year? Well, the 60-year average is about 12 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 intense. And according to the NOAA outlook, we're going to have about 9 to 15 storms, 4 to 8 of those going on to become hurricanes, and 1 to 3 intense storms. So we have a long ways to go into the hurricane season as we go through the rest of this 2012. The actual peak of the hurricane season isn't until September 10th. So we'll see what happens with that as we head on through the rest of a hurricane season. Again, you need a lot of ingredients out there. Sea surface temperatures at least 80 degrees, a pre-existing low pressure center, and upper level calm winds. We'll talk more about that coming up in a few minutes.
One of the greatest concerns in severe weather is, of course, the loss of electricity. Patrick traveled to Atlanta to the Georgia Power Storm Center to see how they deal with a hurricane.
If they need any help, if they can't get anyone, they know someone is in here 24/7.
Georgia Power's Director of Emergency Operations, Aaron Strickland, is as ready for a hurricane as you can be.
When a hurricane hits, generally the force that Katrina was, there are 0 hotels. You automatically go into the mode of, we build cities then for our people to live in. We actually had cities in Mississippi where we housed, fed, bathed, everything for about 12 to 13,000 people.
Posted around the Georgia Power Storm Center in his Atlanta office are smart boards that allow him to track storms and crews and service for over 1 million Georgia Power customers along the coast.
I can click on it and I can go down to the customer level. I can look at stuff like that.
The Georgia Power plan involves getting the home staff out of the line of fire during the hurricane.
I have a skeleton staff down there to take care of the wires are down, they'll get them up, but at some point, if there's an evacuation, we're trying to get them out, let it all fall, because you can't do anything in 70-mile-an-hour wind. You can't work. So evacuate those people. I said, if they can't get out, I said, that's a fear of mine.
The home team is replaced after the storm with pre-staged emergency crews.
Georgia Power in the coastal region is part of a huge network, the Southern Company Network. And it's not just Georgia, it's Alabama Power, Gulf Power, Mississippi Power, and we can all depend on our colleagues all over that huge expanse.
We had a Category 3 or higher storm hitting the Savannah coast. Like I was mentioning, in Mississippi, when Katrina hit down there, we had about 13,000 down there. 13,000 is what my minimum would be that I'd actually be trying to get for the Savannah area.
The need for that many hands came out of calculations that emerged from the Gulf Coast experience of 2005.
We've actually laid Hurricane Katrina, put it an overlay over Georgia looking at it. Georgia, we've got 2.4 million customers. We could likely see over 1 million customers out if we were to have a Katrina-style event on the Savannah, Brunswick coast. The way I understand, the coast is highly susceptible to more flooding probably than we saw in Mississippi with Katrina. That's going to be a huge issue for us, is when can we even get in there? The inland flooding we see is almost back to Statesboro, Georgia, severe flooding.
The crews are supported by a mobile command center that coordinates the efforts of those thousands living in an instant city that they themselves built that day.
We're just like an army. We figure out where the enemy is and we attack. We work during a hurricane 16 and 8, 16 hours working, 8 hours resting. And that's pretty tough because those 16 hours, our employees are out there in the 100-degree heat, the humidity, hard work. They put in a lot of hard work, and then that 8 hours of rest, they're sleeping in a tent with probably 500 of their closest friends. We're never fast enough for anyone, including ourselves.
Strickland says that the power lines themselves can withstand winds up to a Category 3 hurricane. It's the trees and the limbs that take out your electricity. The obvious solution? Running lines underground, but it has its own set of problems.
We get the underground question a good bit. Underground cost about 10 times more than overhead. Repairs takes a good bit longer and a lot more expensive. And you do have underground issues. Underground wire, when it fails, it's not like an overhead. When an overhead wire fails, you can look up and you know exactly where it's at.
The Georgia Power Storm Center has gotten a good test run this summer. Afternoon thunderstorms have already wreaked havoc on staff and schedules.
From July 1 to July 12th, we had almost 600,000 outages. It was one of the worst weeks, a little more than a week, that we've had in a long time. It was day after day. We were working crews 24 hours a day. We were working around the clock.
But that would just be a warm-up should the Georgia-Carolina coast face a direct hit from a major hurricane. In that event, Strickland says, be ready, have a plan, stay away from wires, stay out of work areas, evacuate when ordered, and leave the front porch light on if you would.
Outage, turn your porch light on,
so
that they'll know that the power's back up.
It is still great when we've got guys riding.
A guy named Bruneseau built the Paris sewer system in Napoleon's day. A guy named Chuck Eaton's going to tell you why that matters to us.
That system was not based on the fact or the possibility that every toilet in Paris would be flushed at the same time. Same thing for our streets, highways, water, sewers, telephones. They're not based on the probability that everyone will demand service simultaneously.
Just took a second.
To deal with everybody calling at one time and nobody connecting, Chuck offers the lowest of high-tech options: text.
The most reliable method is simple texting. For example, if you and I have a voice conversation, we have nailed up a path between you and me, and we've dedicated that path to the duration of the conversation. If I send you a text message that says I'm stuck in traffic at exit 104, it takes the system a few milliseconds to zap that message and it's gone. Texting works when nothing else will. Chuck's sister lives in the mountains of North Carolina. If he gets separated from his family, everybody knows to contact her to check on each other. Establish a point of contact that's remote. For example, my point of contact is my sister who lives in western North Carolina. And the family understands if they can't find me to call her and ask her, have they heard from me? And they will have. There are some areas near her house that have no cell coverage whatsoever. But I can queue up a text message on my phone, and it may be several minutes later when the phone sniffs a little bit of signal, that text is gone. So it's the most reliable method of communication. It's basic, it's simple, and you may have to get your 10-year-old to show you how to work it, but it works. Pat, as Dave touched on briefly, there are some meteorological factors that may work in our favor. Tell us about those.
Well, a lot of activity going on in the Pacific Ocean will be influencing the activity in the Atlantic Ocean. Let me show you. Yeah, what we see in the Pacific Ocean can influence what we see in the Atlantic Ocean as far as hurricane activity is concerned. We call this the El Nino, La Nina, or sometimes also known as the Southern Oscillation. But let me show you how it starts off. First of all, out in the Pacific Ocean, way far away from us, we have a pool of warm water. This warm water has a tendency to slosh to the east and the west over a period of anywhere between 4 to 7 years, sometimes up to 12 years in length of this water sloshing back and forth. But as the water does slosh toward the coast of South America in the portion of the central equatorial Pacific Ocean, this is a phase we call El Nino. It's when the waters are warmer in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of South America. What happens then is that thunderstorms begin to develop in this warm area, and the winds from these thunderstorms begin to generate an outflow, and that outflow starts generating a wind current pattern that crosses over Central America into the Caribbean Sea into the Atlantic Ocean, which generates wind shear. Now, Dave just mentioned that calm winds are needed for hurricane development, or even a light easterly wind across the Atlantic Ocean. But when you have these westerly winds, you have a strong indication that hurricane development is going to be a little bit more difficult. And it looks like we have an El Nino developing later on this summer, perhaps August, but more likely September and October, that could deter the development of tropical storms. Let me show you a graph. These are the years since 1950 that we have seen El Ninos, and the opposite of El Ninos, when you have the cool waters off in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of South America, we call that La Nina. And the bottom graph shows you the cycles of the years we've seen La Ninas. The top of the graph, we see the years that we had El Ninos. Well, what about hurricane formation? During those times, these are the hurricanes in the red that we saw during 1950 through 2010. Or in other words, let me show you. The times of El Nino, the hurricanes, were much less. You can see all the lower portions of the hurricane development were during the years of El Nino, except for one. And then the opposite, the La Nina years, is when you had the most activity with hurricanes. So you would like to see El Nino during the course of the year. You have less chance for hurricane development in the Atlantic Ocean because of the activity in the Pacific Ocean. So what does this mean? Odds of a major hurricane making landfall are these. In the event during a La Nina cycle, which we had last year, 66% probability of a major hurricane making landfall somewhere in the United States. During a neutral period between El Nino and La Nina, you have about a 45% odds of a hurricane making landfall, and during a El Nino cycle, you only have a 27% chance of a hurricane making landfall in the United States during an El Nino. El Nino is developing. It looks like it'll be later on this summer and perhaps making it through the fall and winter, hopefully causing the hurricane development to be much less.
Thanks, Patrick. Thank you, Dave. And we'll get deeper into the hurricane season 2012 when we come right back. On any given summer day, 50,000 tourists are enjoying Hilton Head hospitality. That's going to be a mess if a hurricane threatens, but less of a mess thanks to the coordinating efforts of the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber of Commerce that keeps up with who's on the island and where.
Our role for them as a business community is to make sure they're fully informed in terms of sheer numbers. How many people are here? Where are they located? Are they on the south end of the island? Are they on the north end of the island? Are the hotels here fuller than they are there? Whatever the case may be, it's just really important that we communicate effectively with emergency management so they know how they can most effectively get folks off the island and get them to safety.
Because of the threat to communications that a hurricane poses, and with so many vacationers destined for Hilton Head, the Chamber has pre-staged a remote location inland.
There's a team of folks that goes up to Columbia because the phones really start ringing off the hook. We move our phones, we move our website, we make sure that there's current information at all times. We actually have now, if you sign up, we'll send you immediate texts that lets you know as soon as we leave the briefing room in the bunker, we're getting the information, we get it approved, and then we send it out.
In addition to the safety of tourists, the Chamber's also concerned with the interests of the Hilton Head business community, especially in light of a disturbing statistic about business survival after a hurricane.
Over 50% of businesses don't reopen once a hurricane has hit them directly. It's an astounding number.
To avoid that kind of statistic, the Hilton Head Chamber helps businesses prepare for the effects, financial and otherwise, of a hurricane.
It's what we do.
And welcome back. A reminder on the communications front that WTOC is the source for critical information on WTOC TV, the Big Red 11, online at WTOC.com, and your mobile device with the WTOC app. Make sure you have that so you're not looking for critical information as it's coming on you. Now, Dave's got more with our hurricane season 2012, looking at the history of storms. Dave?
Now, once those storms develop, what steers those hurricanes? Well, generally it's the Bermuda high pressure system, and we really look for how strong the Bermuda high is to steer these hurricanes and these systems as they make their way across the Atlantic. If you have some type of weak Bermuda high system, any storms that develop off the African coast will usually take that turn and remain out into the central areas of the Atlantic. Those are the good storms, which we like. And most of the storms usually take that turn and remain out into the central Atlantic. If you get some type of a stronger Bermuda high pressure system, well, that forces these storms to go a little bit more westward before taking that turn to the north. And these are the systems that kind of scare us just a little bit. If you get one of the strongest types of Bermuda highs that really pushes a lot of this high pressure into the Gulf, well, that's where a lot of those storms tend to go, down to the Caribbean and out into the Gulf of Mexico. So what are we looking back in past histories? Well, didn't get a lot of those hurricanes striking the Savannah area. We've only had 4 hurricanes actually in the 1900s to make landfall here in the Savannah region. But if you look back even further into the 1800s, we've actually had about 12 hurricanes to strike the Georgia coastline here in the 1800s. So it only takes one storm to cause a lot of damage to our area. John?
And when we come right back, we'll refresh you on the terms and terminology essential to understanding the season. Stay right there. With 20,000 soldiers and hundreds of millions of dollars in equipment at risk, the 3rd Infantry Division is in a state of alert from day one of the hurricane season.
We are lucky enough to be able to have agreements with other military installations within the state of Georgia. So we are able to move equipment like what you see behind me. We're talking minimum $30 million per aircraft that we can fly aircraft to and move personnel and equipment. We're talking over 20,000 people that we've got to make sure either is hunkered down and ready for the storm if we're not going to evacuate, or to be able to get them on the roads and for them to know which roads to take and which direction to go once they get on the roads.
With so many moving parts, the military can't micromanage individual decisions, but they do stress preparation and communication in the context of a constantly evolving plan.
Every year we update a severe weather guide that we put in the Frontline newspaper, but it's also posted right on the front page of the Team Stewart website. Fort Stewart and Hunter Army Airfield also has a toll-free phone number, an information hotline. This toll-free number is also the only phone number that they would be able to call to know if Fort Stewart and Hunter Army Airfield is all clear to return back after an evacuation.
Flieger says the availability of information is a huge plus, and it turns out his favorite sites are ours too.
There are text alerts that you're able to receive. WTOC has an awesome iPad and iPhone app. There is no reason not to know what's going on.
Now, Dave takes us through the categories and this year's names. Dave?
All right, thanks, John. We're going to take a look at what we have as far as the names. Again, so far of the 2012 hurricane season, we've gone through 4 names already. 3 of these have been tropical storms. Chris has been a hurricane, though, and we are seeing no intense hurricanes yet, but we had a slight change in the Saffir-Simpson scale for 2012. We'll look at the new Saffir-Simpson scale. No changes here for a Category 1 hurricane, which is winds of 74 to 95 miles per hour. Same story as you head up here to Category 2, winds of 96 to 110. But we change a little bit as we get up to Category 3. The old Category 3 was winds of 111 to 130. We've changed it just a bit now, 111 to 129 miles per hour. And same story as we head up here to Category 4, 131 to 155 was the old. New category takes it up to 156 miles per hour, and anything over 157 now is going to be a Category 5. John?
Early preparation is the key. But Jamie Erdel's got good news on that front too. Jamie?
Thank you, John. And what I really want to touch base upon is the warnings and watches that have changed. Now, Tropical Storm Watch, about 2 years ago, the National Hurricane Center changed the old lead time for a Tropical Storm Watch from 36 hours to 48 hours. And you want to think about that because we really feel the effects before the storm really touches our shores. We felt it with Beryl, we felt it with Debbie way before it made landfall. So 48 hours gives you a little bit of extra time to really put things together and put it into perspective where you're going to go and what you need to do to get out of harm's way. The old tropical storm warning was 24 hours and now it's 36 hours, and the same has changed with the hurricane watch. That's 36 hours before the storm conditions arrive. That's old because you really need 48 hours to get out of Dodge and keep you and your pets and your family safe. The warning was 24 hours and now it's 36 hours. Also, the Chatham County Emergency Management has changed a little bit of its vernacular, its verbiage. It's not a voluntary evacuation, it's recommended. Voluntary really seems like, oh, well, I have a choice. You don't have a choice. You have to get out of the city because a hurricane is a definite threat to Savannah, the Low Country, and the Coastal Empire as a whole. Now, I'm trying to take you through the evacuation routes, and you can see you take Highway 80 all the way through the islands from Tybee, you get onto 16 and you head west. And what they'll do, they'll make all eastbound lanes westbound lanes. And if you've seen those hurricane barricades, that's what they're there for. A little bit easier over in the Low Country, it's 278. You take it all the way to 17 or 95, and you take 170 to 278 to 17 or 95 to get off the islands. And Beaufort, a little bit easier there as well because 21 is kind of just a big circle, and then you want to take it northbound to 95. 170 across the bridges, you're covering water, so you really don't want to take that route, so you take 21 northbound to get out of Beaufort. And the Chatham Emergency Management has actually set up a new hotline that tells you when to re-enter, and all that information is on the WTOC Hurricane Evacuation weather page.
And we're glad you're there. Stay right there. There's more to come. You're watching WTOC's First Alert Severe Weather Watch. The Southeast Georgia Health System Brunswick campus has planned extensively to provide for the sick in the event of a hurricane threat. Charlie Wolverton and Laura Grantham stress that in an evacuation, the hospital will be closed. Patients whose health allows them to be discharged will be. But arrangements are in place for those who will need ongoing care.
The order came today. We have patients that would not be able to be discharged for their family to take them to another location. It would be our responsibility, and we would make appropriate transfer arrangements because they'll be traveling with medical personnel. There may be a registered nurse, respiratory therapist, other paramedics and EMTs that will ride with that patient to ensure that they maintain that level of care while they travel to a facility that can care for them while the storm is impacting our area.
The hospital acts in concert with Glenn County and Georgia emergency management agencies.
Essentially, an effective response in healthcare to a hurricane threat is really all about our established relationships with community partners, good planning on a regular basis, and practice.
And welcome back. More now as we talk about storm effects, things that we have to worry about with our tropical season. In fact, one of the #1 storm threats is storm surge, especially here along the Georgia and South Carolina coast. Storm surge is the abnormal high tide. In fact, there's another phrase, storm tide, which combines astronomical tides and storm surge, but it's storm surge that we're going to worry about, which is the greatest potential for loss of life in a hurricane, especially in our area because of our coastline. Generally, stronger storms equal higher surge. Storms can claim up to 9 to 10 lives, but with the evacuation processes that we've now put in place, this has decreased storm surges deaths, so that's very good. How storm surge is produced is, of course, the strength of the hurricane, also the size and the forward speed. The quicker it's moving, the less surge develops. The orientation of the storm surge to the coast, if it's coming straight in or if it's just a swipe, plus the shape of the coastline. There's a lot of discussion we often have about that. The Georgia coast, South Carolina coast. Well, it's not a steeper coastline for us. It's a long, flat, or more conducive to surge. This is a very important map. This is the storm surge map that's LIDAR information from SEMA. Here's Chatham County. The blue is where it floods quickly. The red is where it doesn't flood till later. White should be above even a Category 5 storm. Let me take you in close. Here's Tybee, Wilmington, down to Skidaway Island. The dark blues, those are all Category 1. Lighter blues, Category 2. Coffee Bluff, Vernonburg. Look here in the center of the country. From downtown at the Bluff all the way down to Hunter, that stays above any flooding. But storm surge can affect all the way into West Chatham. That's the Hilton International Airport. There's Route 21 going up to Effingham County. So storm surge, very big threat for storms. High winds are also a storm, especially in coastal areas. There's flat, it's less friction. Inland areas don't tend to get the higher storms. Our tropical rainfall is also important. Think Hurricane Irene with the greatest loss of life. Weaker storms can sometimes produce incredibly locally heavy rainfall. Alberto in the state of Georgia is an example of that. And tropical tornado characteristics. Normally north to northeast moving hurricanes tend to produce the most tornadoes. Remember, Debbie earlier this season was moving in that direction. Storms typically tend to be short-lived or hard to see on the radar and usually are rain-wrapped. In fact, if this is the direction of the storm, here's the greatest threat of any tornadoes in a hurricane, what's called the right front quadrant. So those are some of the biggest storm threats. You can always get storm information on our Facebook page. Like us at WTOC Weather or on Twitter. Follow us at WTOC Weather. We'll get you all the information. And when we come back, 8,000 employees and millions of dollars in Gulfstream all at risk in a storm. What are they going to do? Stay right there. When severe weather threatens and an evacuation becomes a possibility, gasoline for your car becomes a top priority. Director of Operations Jerry Morris says the Enmark stations will ramp up to be ready for the rush.
We make sure the stores are stocked, the fuel is really stocked because we know we're going to be very busy with fuel, and we plan on staying as long as we can.
The Hurricane Floyd experience, where hundreds of cars were stranded without gas, has guided the planning process for future emergency evacuations.
We learned that we had to be prepared ahead of time, and we had to have a response early on with our people so they knew what to do. We make sure that our trucking company, part of their deal is to kind of critical. They move people in, they bring drivers on to be able to to handle the extra load during that time to make sure stations stay supplied so everybody can get their tanks.
If Enmark loses electricity, they have a contingency plan to keep their stations up and get the recovery process moving.
We actually have 6 portable generators, and we have the stations pre-wired to be able to hook the portable generators up. So if power goes down, we can still get people gas.
And welcome back. Glad you're with us on WTOC. Lots of lives and livelihoods are wrapped up in Gulfstream. A hurricane jeopardizes all of that. We asked Gulfstream Manager of Occupational Safety what those guys do.
Our hurricane plan is driven around two pieces right now. It's driven around our employees. Have a plan, activate your plan, follow your plan so that you can come back and help us start the facility back up and go back to manufacturing and do what we do best and manufacture the greatest aircraft in the country. Secondly is protecting the product. Protecting the product means we're flying those airplanes away from here, keeping them away from imminent danger, because it's the winds and projectiles is the issues that we have here on the airfield. There will not be any aircraft stored on the airfield. Everything is either in our hangars, what we can fly away, we've flown away to other airports around the country.
And remember, the WTOC First Alert Weather Team has an extensive hurricane plan that ensures our contact with you through broadcast, the WTOC mobile app, our partnership with Clear Channel's radio group, and please don't forget WTOC.com. No matter where you may go and in the event of an evacuation, WTOC.com will be there. And we'll be right back after this. If a hurricane were to send us back to the horse and buggy days, Savannah's community bankers say you don't have to worry about your money.
The good thing about technology today, and particularly our technology, is you can run the bank anywhere that you can get internet access and electricity.
The ability to access your accounts and pay bills and receive bills or receive money is still doesn't miss a beat, even if Savannah is underwater.
Cash is high on the list of evacuation items.
Should something happen, we would extend hours late. We would, especially as people started to come back and had access or needed things, we would extend hours to that as well. The important part of it is knowing that no matter what happens, the community bank is going to be there to support the community.
But both bankers say that need is not as great, thanks to a network of ATMs around the state and nation.
Everybody thinks about cash. Certainly, it would be wise to have some cash on you in the event that there was an evacuation or a complete loss of electricity. ATMs don't work. However, if you're evacuating, just make sure you got your debit card, your ATM card, because ATMs at other banks would work and our technology would still be working.
A most respected voice in preparation in the Savannah area is Chatham Emergency Management Director Clayton Scott. We talked to him as the hurricane season began, and Dave Turley has that story.
Any discussion about the hurricane season must always include those seasonal forecasts, the numbers of named storms expected, as we reported earlier in the show. And our SEMA director has made a special offer.
I've offered to make seasonal forecasts myself. I have 0 qualifications. All it takes is one. Who cares what the forecast is? 117. Doesn't matter. All it takes is one.
Clayton Scott is the director of the Emergency Management Agency here in Chatham County. SEMA works with local agencies in planning and coordinating emergency preparedness. And the first thing?
Get a NOAA weather radio, the emergency weather radios. Y'all really push this. I know you'll program anybody's radio for them. Really, really important that you have that. And my personal feeling is you don't need to program it for thunderstorms. You live in Chatham County. Guess what's going to happen every night at 5 o'clock? We're going to have a thunderstorm.
It's the tornado and hurricane warnings that require immediate action. And that's why a NOAA weather radio is so important to your hurricane preparedness. Do you realize it may take up to a week after the storm leaves before you can get back to your home, to your business? People don't understand how long that will take, according to Clayton Scott. and he's the guy who will keep you away until everything is safe, the water and power is back on, and all is secure.
A good example of that one is safe deposit boxes. Safe deposit boxes are not waterproof. And so if you live on Tybee or the Landis, you got a bank there, it's going to go underwater. And you say, well, wait a minute, I'll get one in bank such and such downtown, which is on high ground.
But you can't get there if trees are blocking roadways, power lines are down everywhere following the worst case. So planning ahead must also include planning for after the storm. And with some planning, you are likely to experience some inconvenience, but you will be fine. That's SEMA's plan.
Thanks, Dave. Now, when he's not bringing you your Saturday forecast on TV, Ron Wallace is exploring the cyber world with Sumitsu. He's got some tips for you to think about for your computer.
Well, one of the first things a person might want to consider when a storm is named out there and there's a threat or a situation where you might have to leave is that protect your data. The computer is just simply a box. It can be replaced. Now, because you can't take the box with you or may not be able to, the next best thing would be able to back it up to an external device, such as an external hard drive or external thumb drive. These external hard drives, such capacities as 500 gigs for less than $100. You can also get the thumb drive, something you can put in your pocket, capacities up to 35 gigs or 32 gigabytes, and those can be had for $20 or less. Now that you've found yourself in a situation where you can't take the hardware with you and there's a possibility that your home may be inundated with rising water, you would want to wrap the computer, unplug all the cables, and wrap the computer in these plastic garbage bags, maybe a couple of them. Wrap it up, tie it off, and place it at the highest point in your home that you can leave it, just in case the water rises. And theoretically, if your home remains intact during the storm, you'll come back to a dry computer.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Now, just ahead, what's a regular guy doing to protect his home and family? We'll let you know on WTOC's First Alert Severe Weather Watch. In hurricane-force winds, these Georgia Ports Authority cargo containers, if empty, could become missiles flying through the air. Securing the containers is one of the first orders of business at GPA.
Securing the containers on the facility, empty containers down to the ground. We will not put the city of Savannah or our ports in Brunswick, those local communities at risk.
Once the physical facility is secured, the port turns its attention to the physical and human resources that are its responsibility.
We have 41 ships a week calling this facility. We have about 1,000 employed GPA employees, most of which work right here in the Garden City terminal. But outside of that, we've got thousands of folks coming to the terminal every day.
The Coast Guard has command of the channel, and ships are diverted if a hurricane is projected for this part of the country.
There will be no vessels anywhere near here by the time the storm hits.
Once the threat is passed, GPA turns full attention to getting the docks of Savannah and Brunswick back to work as one of the nation's busiest ports.
We have 350,000 jobs around the state counting on us to move products in and out of this facility. So it's crucial that we get operational as soon as possible.
The one answer we got from everybody we talked to about hurricane preparation is that you should have a plan. So we thought we'd check in with a local family to see if they have a plan. Mike and Sarah Melroy have 3 very good reasons to have a thorough hurricane plan. Lily, Charlotte, and Anna Claire. The girls are students at Blessed Sacrament and are currently attending BC cheerleading camp. They are what drives Mike and Sarah's thinking.
Especially after Katrina, after seeing everything that happened with Katrina, we really want to keep our families safe, make sure that they're in a good place.
Mike has duties at Memorial Medical that could keep him separate from Sarah and the girls. But they've pre-positioned sanctuaries depending on the severity of the storm.
We have friends that live like in Springfield area, West Effingham County. We have an old college roommate of mine lives in Metter, so that would be a possibility. And then we've got real good friends in Atlanta. And then her father lives just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee.
We tell the girls to pack a backpack and, these are the toys you're going to play with on the trip.
Annie, their pooch, is ready to go along.
She's part of the plan. She's got a seat on the van.
And Mike and Sarah have thought about flashlights and important papers.
We've got flood insurance and, of course, homeowners and all that stuff, so keep those papers handy as well.
Part of a plan that emphasizes what matters.
The building can be fixed, and you never know what the damage is going to be, and you can't spend too much time worrying about that. We've got plenty to worry about just trying to get us all out safe and sound with what we need.
And we'll have some final thoughts on the hurricane season when we come right back. Again, thank you for being with us tonight. Time for some final thoughts on the 2012 hurricane season. Senior meteorologist Pat Prokop, what would you leave us with?
Well, I keep an eye on the Pacific Ocean, because what's going on out there is going to influence what's going to happen in the Atlantic Ocean. Of course, we'll keep you posted on WTOC and WTOC.com and Facebook.
And Dave Turley, hurricane specialist that you are, meteorologist, what would you say?
Well, we're talking about looking in the Pacific. We're thinking about that El Nino maybe happening, but I don't think we really want to focus too much about an El Nino year, the lower amount of storms, because it really only takes one storm to do the damage for our area. So now is the time we need to prepare.
There you go, from the experts. Tomorrow's letters don't get written. That's how Ben Hayden used to sign off his broadcasts, and he's right. So while you're thinking about it now, go jot down your hurricane plan, where you're going, what you're going to take along, how you're going to communicate. Remember texting. And always know that WTOC will have minute-by-minute information so you know when to trigger your plan. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Stay safe.